You know, when you hold a physical compass in your hand, there is this like absolute implicit trust that the needle is pointing north.
Right. Yeah.
Like it feels totally objective. You follow that needle, assuming that north is a real, tangible destination that you're actively trying to reach.
Well, it's the fundamental basis of navigation. I mean, you operate under the assumption that the destination is the entire point of the journey.
Exactly.
You're moving towards something solid, to something that exists independently of you.
But imagine if you hike for days, you finally get to the North Pole, and there is absolutely nothing there.
Just as a void.
Literally just a void. And standing there in the cold, you suddenly realize uh, the needle wasn't actually pointing north at all. It was just magnetically reacting to the compass of the person walking right next to you.
Wow. Yeah, that's
You were navigating based purely on someone else's trajectory, completely blind to the fact that the destination itself is just an illusion.
that is such an unsettling idea.
Right. And that unsettling idea is the core of today's deep dive. We're looking at a piece of conceptual art and this really fascinating stack of accompanying notes inspired by Taylor Swift's massive hit song, You Belong With Me.
Which I know sounds like quite the jump.
It does. But we aren't just talking about pop music today. We're breaking down the hidden, almost mathematical architecture of human desire. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because to go from a chart-topping anthem about high school crushes to a philosophical deconstruction of jealousy is, quite the leap.
It sounds like a massive leap. But the materials we're looking at today bridge that gap beautifully, I think. Because to understand the architecture of this specific type of desire, like the classic love triangle, we really have to start with the physical object itself.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the source described the visual concept of this artwork as a geometric triangular structure made entirely of frosted glass. And it's suspended weightlessly in this stark white environment.
Let's talk about that medium for a second. Frosted glass. It's such a specific
Oh,
choice.
totally.
I mean, it's not totally opaque like a brick wall where you just turn around and walk away. But it's not transparent either.
Right, you get the sense that something might be inside.
Yeah, like a shape or a shadow. But you can't ever quite see it clearly. It demands your attention without actually giving you any answers.
What's fascinating here is how the visual concept notes explicitly highlight that function. They state that these transparent planes define a center that remains inaccessible.
Inaccessible.
Yes, that word is the key to everything we are going to discuss today. The structure implies a core, a prize waiting in the middle, but by its very design, you cannot reach it. You can only circle it.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the first piece of text accompanying the art. It's a poem, simply titled Bridge, and it completely reframes that classic teenage love triangle we all know from the song.
Right, the whole girl next door in the bleachers versus the cheer captain trope.
Exactly. But the poem doesn't treat this dynamic like a romance at all. The very first line calls the love triangle patriarchal carpooling.
Patriarchal carpooling.
Yeah.
It instantly strips away the romanticism we usually project onto these situations.
It really does.
I mean, a carpool implies you're just sharing a ride.
Yeah.
You are strapped into a vehicle, in this case, a societal structure that pits young women against each other for male attention. But the vehicle itself is just a mechanism. You aren't actually driving.
You're just in the backseat glaring at the other passenger.
Exactly.
And the poem pushes that idea further. It says, we don't desire the other person, we imitate a glance. And then my absolute favorite line, the boy is just a decorative roundabout.
It is a brilliant spatial metaphor because it changes the whole function of the prize in the relationship.
That totally changes it. Think about literal traffic control. When you drive up to a roundabout in your neighborhood, the whole point isn't to park your car in the middle of it.
No, of course not.
The middle is just a patch of grass, maybe some flowers or a statue. It's purely decorative. The entire operational purpose of a roundabout is to force you to interact with the other cars.
Right, you have to yield, you merge, you monitor everyone's speed.
Yes. The guy in this scenario isn't a destination at all. He is just a traffic circle you drive around purely to interact with your rival.
And the poem explicitly reinforces your traffic analogy, too. It states, the rival serves as a signpost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the rival is the one actually giving you directions, telling you where to invest your emotional energy. You aren't looking at the center of the roundabout. You are looking at the car merging right next to you.
That makes perfect sense.
And the poem brings in the vivid imagery of the song with the line, high school produces sacrifices in sweatshirts.
That line hits so hard. It takes that famous innocent image, she wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts, and turns the sweatshirt into like a sacrificial robe.
Right. You're sacrificing your own independent identity, your peace of mind, just to play a role in this geometric game.
And the game itself is fundamentally rigged, isn't it?
It's completely rigged, which the poem captures by saying, jealousy lends its voice to romanticism, and concludes with the devastating image, love applauds musical chairs. It's a game of displacement.
Musical chairs. That is such a visceral way to describe this. When the music stops, you scramble for a chair simply because someone else wants a chair?
Half the time, you don't even care which chair it is.
Exactly. You just don't want to be the one left standing. But, realizing that we're just driving in circles around a roundabout or playing an intense game of musical chairs, that doesn't explain the underlying engine making the car move. Like, why are our brains wired to care more about the rival than the actual prize?
That is the crucial pivot here. The next document in our stack, the Ivy League note, shifts us from poetic metaphors to sociological frameworks. To answer exactly that question...
Okay, bringing in the academics.
Right. It introduces us to the MTF, the Mimetic Triangular Attraction Framework Model.
I have to pause here and just point out the incredible, dry academic shade thrown in this note. The author literally writes, as everyone knows, acronyms are important. Without them, academic language would collapse into readability.
I love that line. It's a fantastic bit of self-awareness. But behind the dense jargon of MTA is a profound psychological theory.
So break that down for us.
Well, the note explains that human desire rarely, if ever, follows a linear path between two people. We like to think attraction is a straight arrow, right? Person A sees person B, decides they are inherently valuable, and desires them.
But the Ivy League note argues that's a myth.
Exactly. It argues desire organizes itself around triangular structures.
Yeah.
It is a constant self-reinforcing loop of attention, rivalry, and perceived scarcity.
Okay, all that academic jargon aside, here's where it gets really interesting. This theory is basically suggesting that our romantic feelings in these situations aren't even our own original feelings.
Yeah.
We are subconsciously copying or mimicking what our rival wants. That's the mimetic part of the framework. But let me push back on that for a second. Aren't they suggesting the original attraction is 100% fake?
That's a really good question.
I mean, surely the girl on the bleachers has some baseline attraction to the guy before the cheerleader even enters the picture, right? It can't just be pure imitation from day one.
That is the exact friction the theory explores. The framework doesn't say the initial spark is completely manufactured out of thin air, but it argues that mimesis completely hijacks that spark.
Hijacks it how?
Think about human evolution and psychology. In highly ambiguous social environments, like high school, where social capital is everything and value is constantly shifting, we often lack a true internal compass for what is genuinely valuable.
Okay.
So as a cognitive shortcut, we outsource our desires. We look to other people to tell us what is worth wanting.
So if the cheerleader, who holds high social status, wants the guy, he suddenly gains immense value. Not because of who he is, but because of who wants him.
Exactly. The rivalry validates the desire. And the source backs this up with survey data that is arguably the most compelling piece of evidence in the entire stack.
Oh, you mean the longitudinal double one-eyed survey, which, by the way, is such a wonderfully strange academic term.
It really is.
It implies you have one eye fixed on the prize and one eye fixed entirely on your rival.
Right. So they surveyed 10,000 adolescent recollections regarding these types of teenage love triangles.
10,000.
Yeah. And they found that a massive 83.7% of respondents could no longer clearly remember the person they actually pursued.
Let that number sink in, over 83%.
It's staggering.
But, and this is the real kicker, those same people retained vivid, sharp, deeply emotional memories of the person who appeared to be competing for that attention.
Yes, they forgot the crush, but they remembered the rival perfectly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that 83.7% fundamentally rewrites how we understand memory, passion, and human motivation.
It absolutely does. The mind doesn't cling to the crush because, mathematically speaking, the crush was never the actual source of the emotional intensity.
Right, the mind clings to the rival.
Because the rival was the true engine of the experience. They were the ones generating the scarcity and the threat.
It makes you rethink every dramatic high school memory. Nearly 84% of people can picture the cheerleader's exact facial expressions, the way she walked down the hall, the precise tone of her voice.
They completely forgot the guy on the football team they were supposedly agonizing over for months.
It's wild. And that psychological phenomenon is physically represented by the frosted glass triangle of the artwork, right?
Yes. The Ivy League note calls this residual mimetic geometry, or RMG.
Okay, RMG.
It's a condition where the center of desire remains permanently vacant, but the participants continue to orbit around it. Think of it like a phantom limb.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
The actual object of desire has been amputated from the memory, but the structure of the rivalry persists. You still feel the itch of the jealousy long after the original attraction has vanished into thin air.
Directional imitation seeking a destination. That's the final line of the Ivy League note, and it is so haunting.
It really is.
You're just imitating someone else's direction, desperately hoping you eventually bump into a destination that makes sense. It completely strips away all the magic and destiny we culturally assign to romance.
It suggests that what feels like cosmic destiny is actually just social geometry. We are drawn into these shapes without realizing it.
But if the Ivy League note explains the complex math of this geometry, what does this actually look like on the ground?
Well, the next perspective in our sources explains exactly that.
Right, the barfly note. It explains what happens to the poor souls actually trapped inside the triangle. We are moving from the highbrow university lecture hall straight to a sticky table at a dive bar.
The tone shift is immediate and brilliant. I mean, the barfly note doesn't bother with acronyms like MTAF or evolutionary psychology. It just cuts straight to the brutal, observed truth of human behavior.
Its opening line is perfect. 3 corners. That's already too many.
It's purely practical. The barfly note points out the ultimate tragic irony happening inside the song and inside the artwork. Everyone involved operates under a massive delusion.
How so?
Well, the 2 girls think they're fighting for the boy, and the boy, for his part, thinks he is in the privileged position of choosing between 2 girls. He thinks he's the kingmaker.
But they are all entirely wrong. The note says, meanwhile, the triangle is the only thing actually running the show.
Exactly. None of the humans are in charge. The shape itself is dictating their actions.
Yeah.
They are prisoners to the geometry.
And to prove that point, the barfly note offers a simple, devastating hypothetical. Remove the rival, and half the romance evaporates before the first chorus.
Evaporates before the first chorus. That is a powerful observation.
I really want to sit with that for a second. If the cheer captain suddenly transfers to a different school, does the girl on the bleachers even care about the guy anymore?
The source is aggressively arguing no, she doesn't.
Because the rivalry is the fuel. Without the threat of someone else taking the prize, the car engine just dies in the middle of the roundabout.
This raises an important question, though. If the sheer shape of a rivalry is dictating your emotions, how much free will do you actually have in who you pursue?
That's tough. We like to believe our desires are authentic and deeply personal.
Right. But this note suggests our desires are highly conditional and almost entirely dependent on the presence of a threat.
So what does this all mean for the people who actually win the game? Because eventually the music stops and someone gets the chair.
The barfly note has a tragic punchline for that scenario, too. It says, funny thing is, when people finally get what they wanted, they often discover they were mostly interested in wanting it.
The thrill of the chase.
Yes, but framed here not as a romantic adventure or a badge of honor, but as a psychological trap that leaves you completely unfulfilled.
It reminds me of getting caught up in a fierce bidding war at an auction. You go in, and a totally mundane item comes up on the block. Maybe an old lamp. You don't even really need a lamp.
But someone across the room bids on it.
Exactly. Suddenly, your paddle is up, they bid again. Your heart starts racing, your adrenaline is pumping, you are locked in eye contact with this total stranger across the room, and you must beat them.
The lamp is no longer a lamp. It is a symbol of victory.
Yes. You finally win, you pay way too much money, and you take the prize home. And you set it on your kitchen table, and the adrenaline fades, and you look at it, and you realize you just bought an empty box.
You didn't want the lamp.
No, you didn't want the lamp. You just wanted the pure, intoxicating energy of the bidding war.
And that is the exact mechanism the artwork is highlighting. The bidding war is the mimetic desire in action. And your analogy brings us perfectly to the curator's note in our sources, which beautifully synthesizes the poetry, the academics, and the barfly's blunt truth. The curator writes, 3 points suspended, no one occupies the center, desire repeats its echo.
No one occupies the center. It circles right back to the visual concept of the frosted glass triangle we started with.
Right. The center remains inaccessible.
Because, as the barfly note concludes, the object understands this. Nobody reaches the center because there was never anything there to begin with.
The frosted glass isn't hiding a prize. It's hiding a void.
It's hiding a void. That gives me chills. I mean, I've been thinking about this all wrong.
How do you mean?
The artwork isn't keeping you out to protect something valuable in the middle. It's keeping you out so you don't realize the middle is completely hollow.
Precisely. The ambiguity is an absolute requirement to maintain the momentum of the desire. If that frosted glass were perfectly clear, the illusion would break instantly.
Right. If you could see that the center was empty, the rivalry would end.
The whole structure would collapse. If the 83.7% of survey respondents had realized at the time that the center was vacant, they never would have generated those vivid, lifelong memories of their rivals.
The system requires you to be blind to function. It's a mechanism that feeds entirely on its own smoke and mirrors.
It really is.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the journey we've just been on. We started with the aesthetic of a massive Taylor Swift pop song. A very familiar, very catchy story about a high school crush, short skirts, t-shirts, and feeling left on the outside.
Very relatable scenario for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And through this stack of conceptual art notes, we uncovered a fairly intense philosophical thesis about how human beings operate.
We moved from the poetry of the bridge, which exposed the patriarchal carpooling and the guy as merely a decorative roundabout, straight into the Ivy League mechanics of mimetic triangular attraction.
We learned that what we think is genuine desire is often just an echo chamber of rivalry. It's like an evolutionary shortcut where we outsource our values to our competitors.
And finally, the barfly brought us back down to earth, with the harsh reality that getting what you want often reveals that you only ever cared about the act of wanting.
The prize in these triangles is almost always an empty center. The true, undeniable energy comes from the jealousy, the rivalry, and the sheer momentum of the chase.
It challenges the very foundation of how we view our formative romantic experiences. It asks us to look back at our own histories and attempt to separate the genuine affection from the mimetic geometry.
And that is a process I highly recommend you try for yourself. Think back on your own past, your own high school triangles, or those fierce rivalries you had in your younger years.
It's definitely an illuminating exercise.
When you were losing sleep, stressing out, constantly strategizing your next move in the hallway, were you truly chasing the prize, or were you just stuck orbiting in someone else's geometry?
Did you really want the guy or the girl or the lead role in the school play?
Exactly. Or were you just a car circling a decorative roundabout, entirely focused on beating the other driver?
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
Once you see the geometry of the triangle and recognize the rival as the true center of your attention, you can't unsee it.
You really can't. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Because it's so easy to look back at high school and laugh at our teenage selves, right?
Oh, definitely.
We say, oh, we were just kids caught up in silly drama, our brains weren't fully developed, we write it off. But if our teenage romantic desires were largely just imitations bouncing off a frosted glass triangle where the center was always empty, what does that mean for our adult desires?
That is the truly unsettling extrapolation.
Right.
The geometry doesn't naturally disappear
Yeah.
just because we graduate and get a diploma. The stakes just change.
Exactly. When we relentlessly chase a dream job or a specific lifestyle or a certain level of social status in our 30s, 40s, or 50s, are we actually aiming for a center that will genuinely fulfill us?
Or are we, once again, just holding a compass that is magnetically repelled by the person walking right next to us?
It makes you wonder how much of adulthood is just a more expensive game of musical chairs. Are we still just running in the exact same direction as our rivals, completely blind to the fact that there might be nothing waiting for us at the North Pole?
Just a void in the center, waiting to be discovered.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself desperately wanting something, just because someone else wants it too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.